welcome to Southwest Flavor. We're here every Tuesday morning at 9 a.m., and we just want you to remember to download the Live the Dream app. It's on your Google Store and your Apple Store. Live the Dream app gets you on there. It's free. You get to enjoy all the shows, and between the shows, there's always music. So there's always something on there for you to enjoy. Today we have a guest that I've known for a little bit over 30 years. And he's my pastor, Pastor David McAllister from the Bridge Church.
Wow. Okay, I didn't expect that. That's cool.
How are you doing this morning?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing good. Good.
Good.
Excited for you to be here.
Yeah, this is fun.
Yeah. Well, tell us a little bit about yourself. What brought you here to Tucson?
Okay. I've been a pastor for about 42 years, and the first 10 years I was actually in Michigan, so Kalamazoo, Michigan. There really is a city called Kalamazoo. So
how big is that?
Oh, gosh, they probably maybe a quarter mil.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
It's bigger than I thought. Yeah.
It's fairly substantial. So we were there for about 10 years, and so I was pastoring there and had our first 3 kids there. My first wife ended up just shockingly just rocked our world because she ended up with it's called an astrocytoma. Mm-hmm. And so a brain tumor. She was only 30.
Wow.
Which is kind of wild because it's kind of wild to hear him say this, but the medical professional said, if you want a brain tumor, which I don't know who wants a brain tumor, but if you want one, this is the one you want.
Oh, because it's so sudden?
No, because it's so operable. It actually, it takes forever. It grows very slowly, the whole thing there, yes.
Oh.
The problem was, because she actually passed away in 3 days.
Yeah.
The problem was it was the right brain tumor, meaning you could take care of it, except it was in the wrong place. So it was on her hypothalamus. So they couldn't operate on it. They had no idea. We saw some deterioration over the years, but we didn't know what it was. So we looked into it a little bit, but it wasn't significant enough. And then, within 3 days, she just kind of, I went upstairs and she was foaming at the mouth. It was a bad situation.
Yeah.
So rushed her in, had no idea. 3 days later, she passed away. And to say my world was rocked.
Yeah.
3 days later, all of a sudden, everything changed. I had my 3 children and the ministry that we had going on there. And so, life got, in my mind, real short at that moment because when things can change that quickly, you just look at life, very, very differently. Yeah. And so I took stock of that. Things had been going well there at that ministry, but I really wanted to do something different. Oh. And you really can't do that in the church world unless you basically start from scratch.
Oh.
If you want, it really is true. You go into other situations and certain things are set up and in place. And so I wanted to try and just go from scratch, which was really scary.
Yeah.
At that point, I was 30. I think when I got here, I was 32. And we actually looked at a couple different places here. We looked at Phoenix, we looked at Tucson, we looked at Denver. And that's funny to me because I've lived a variety of places in my life. I grew up some in California and different stuff, but we also lived in some cold country. And so any of your listeners who know cold country, oh my God, I don't get it. We would wake up in the morning, and they really did this on the radio station. They would wake up and they would tell you how quickly you basically would die out there.
Oh.
Yeah. And it was often a minute and a half. It was
Really?
okay, this is the temperature, this is the wind chill. I remember I used to have to go out, and I had to learn this. You don't throw warm water.
On your windshield because it'll crack it?
Well, no, because it freezes faster.
Oh.
Isn't that weird?
Really?
Yeah. There's a thing there, but it actually freezes faster. But I learned you don't do that. We had to put lights underneath the cars so we could actually start them the next morning. And all I could think is, why
what
on
a different world.
earth does anybody live here?
Yeah,
While
by
I
choice.
lived there.
Yeah.
So there was that part of it, but we ended up settling on Tucson. Obviously, we were excited about that possibility of starting a church here. The real concern, honestly, in my life at that point is, you know what, I wasn't a great single guy the first time around. I didn't want to do this again, you know, and so it really was, what am I going to do? And so I had to get that issue resolved. I had my 3 kids and things like that. And so it's kind of funny because I ended up out. My parents live in Yuma, Arizona. My dad was a pastor. They've passed away now. But I was out there on vacation, and so I was talking to my mom, and she was very intuitive. And so we were just talking, and I just said, Mom, anybody? I'm really looking for these qualities in a woman. I went through the whole thing, and she looked over at me and said, Kimberly Hoskins, and I was like, what? That's not what I expected at all. They ended up knowing Kimberly. Kimberly had been involved in the pageant scene, and so she had been Miss Arizona, and they worked with her through the process of doing that, kind of to keep her head on straight.
Okay, yeah.
Through the process, and then she went to the Miss America pageant and did all that, and so they knew her not real well, but they knew her a little bit. But oddly enough, my dad's secretary was her mom.
Oh,
yeah. And then so through some events, I ended up. About a week and a half later, getting to meet Kimberly at church. She had no idea why I was like a little more interested in her. I had my son Cameron at that point. He was probably, I think he was about 5.5 months old. So when my first wife died. Yeah. And so I ended up driving. She was going to the U of A, so Tucson.
Perfect. Yeah.
So I drove over and met with her. She had no idea why. Her father had died actually when she was the age of my son Jacob, and so there was a comparison there, and so we talked about that. So long story short, we ended up going over to Jacobs Park over there and sitting and talking, and I actually told her, that I was here because I wanted to see if there was any potential of a future relationship, and it was kind of wild.
It was almost like an interview.
A little bit. Yeah. Well, I wanted to do it differently because, like I said, the single life is very difficult, and lots of times what we do is we get emotionally involved, which causes us to miss all the important things that can wreck things in the end.
Right, exactly.
And so it very much was like that, not just for me, but for her as well. And it was wild. I didn't know that, but we had gone to the Olive Garden. We'd had lunch together. We had talked a little bit. Oddly enough, tell me how smooth of an operator I was. So here's this girl that she's beautiful. She's interesting. A lot of good qualities. And so in the process of talking at the Olive Garden, it somehow came up about the issue of heaven and hell. And so I have a whole series on heaven and hell. You've been aware of that. And it really is fascinating to see where that came from, the basis of why the flood took place. A lot of people are unaware of what took place through that. Right. And so it came up, and we started talking about it, and that was my smooth operator move with the girl. Wow. Yeah, they'll talk about heaven and hell. Chicks dig that, kind of one of those things.
Never thought about that.
Yeah, I didn't either, actually. But anyway, once we got to Jacobs Park and started talking, she had actually made a comment at lunch, which made me think that she was kind of the classic feminist, I don't need a man in my life and things like that. And that happened. And things had been going so well. Now, again, she had no idea I was even interested in her. And things had been going so well. And I just talk about deflated. It's like, oh, no, not that. Yeah. Because I knew that wouldn't fit within God's dynamic. And so I told her when we were talking at Jacobs Park, I said, listen, you said some stuff at lunch. Said some things that I'm well aware you're not going to be interested in this. However, I need to say this to you because I want to challenge you to kind of raise your standards for what you're looking in a man. Yeah. Now, here's the reason I said that. The day before, I met with her mom.
Oh, okay.
Yes, so I knew she was going to find out.
Yeah.
About this conversation, whether I liked it or not. And so I figured I'd be the one to kind of make a fool of myself instead of have her do that. So I met with her mom. I took her mom to lunch because I really did want to kind of old school, ask for the opportunity to be able to talk to her daughter. Right. And what her mom said is she said, after all the talk that we had, her response was, I can't tell you no, but I'm really scared because I think you're exactly what Kimberly's looking for. Oh, and I was like, so that scares you because... And it really did come down to, and I get this, I had 3 kids. Yeah. Kimberly had never even babysat in her life.
Oh, okay.
And I'm going to say, hey, here's 3 kids. So I got it. I completely understood that. But she did say, yep, you can go talk to her and do all that. So all of that happened. We find ourselves at Jacobs Park, and I say all this, and I say over and over, look, I know you're not interested in this, but I continued to go through the process of what I said, if I could be interested in you, then think you really can raise that standard to have a man that's kind of more worthy of you, who will hold you to be precious and who will take care of you, provide for you, things like that. And it was a really cool moment, dude, because having already been married, I didn't think I'd ever have that moment that you do kind of have in an early relationship, again, where your heart kind of flips.
Yeah.
Because she finally said, wait a minute. She's finally stopped. I probably talked for 20 minutes. And she finally went, wait a minute. Did I say I wasn't interested in you?
Oh.
And my heart flipped, man, and I smiled and I laughed. I said, no, I guess you really didn't say that.
Okay.
We talked for the next 5 hours. We sat at that bench. We kind of closed the place down, and it was awesome. And we went over a lot of important things about what we valued. And it was kind of interesting because at that point, Kimberly wasn't a Christian. She thought she was. She, had been kind of raised in the church, here and there and that kind of thing. And so I got an opportunity to lead her to Christ, which was really cool. I got a chance to baptize her and all of that. And then the whole process took place of where actually what ended up happening is she took care of Cameron, our youngest, for a month, and then I flew her to Michigan. I moved out of the house. She had the house. Gave her an opportunity to spend time with the kids, and man, that was a God thing.
Yeah.
I mean, the kids just, as you can imagine, there was such a loss. I mean, Mom was there, and then Mom was just gone.
Right.
And I'm sorry, but there's no way. I'm not a good mother. I'm just not. And
that's not our role.
No, it's really not.
It's not.
It's not. Yeah. And that became readily apparent.
Yeah.
And so the way they responded to her, it was a little. I remember we met her at the airport, and a whole bunch of my friends were there too. We met her at the airport, and she's coming in with Cameron. And Jake and Stacy went running to her, saying, "Mommy!" And now you have to understand that was a little weird, especially for my friends. They all knew Rhonda, my first wife, and so that was a little awkward to say the least. But that's how we approached it. About this is what we're going to do.
Wow!
So
and they were probably around 5 and 7.
Let's see. Jake was 5.5 when Rhonda died, so he would have been older than that. And then Stacy was about 3.5.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, to watch what God did, I mean, it was very cool. So anyway, that was the backstory. Then came the time where we were going to move out here, which we basically packed everything up. We had a red panel wagon. It was kind of one of those deals, and the U-Haul. She drove the panel wagon. I drove the U-Haul, and we came out here. Didn't know anybody. And it was interesting because that was a very different time. And I'm sure your listeners, certainly the guys that own this place, get this.
Right.
It was a different time because when we got here, we had the capability of literally through advertising impacting this entire community.
Yeah.
We hit the airways. Back then it was, Kim FM. We were real big on that. We did all the radios, all the TV stations, and we kind of blitzed on letting people know we were here. And that's before you had to do the mosaic, where you have to do so many different areas because there's so many lines of advertising.
Right. I think I saw you're advertising on the Shopper.
Yeah.
Back then.
Big time on the Shopper. And, the Shopper went away, but that was our bread and butter.
Yeah.
We always made sure we were on the front or the back because that's how they laid it in the mailbox and paid extra, to do that. So that first day we had 154 people show up, and we were so thankful because we had an organizational meeting. So this was at the Foothills Mall. So we started in the theater
in
at
the
Foothills Mall.
movie theater.
Yeah. But so we were at the Foothills Mall in a meeting room. I had it set up for 250 people.
Okay.
One person showed up.
Oh,
I mean,
the meeting.
Yes, we put flyers out in August in Tucson. I mean, it was awful. We put flyers everywhere. 250 people could have been there. We had one, and he was an accountant that was just looking for a little bit of extra work on the side.
Oh, it was almost like a networking meeting for him.
It was awful. And I remember I literally was sitting on a table that we had set up, and I thought it was over. And that's when Kimberly, my wife, said, David, we've got to advertise. And I was like, honey, we can't afford it. Because I was doing all this on my dime.
Yeah.
And she said, we can't afford not to.
Yeah, exactly.
And I was like, And that's when all that stuff started happening. That's when Kim FM, that's when the TV stations, that's when, the Shopper. And when we did all that. And so we had 154 people show up, and we grew it in 3 months to 50 people. That's called bad church growth, all right, going definitely the wrong direction. Very thankful when those people walked in, but we definitely took a downward trajectory.
Do you think people were just curious at first to
Sure.
check it out? And,
Yeah, and you know what? I'll give people credit who hung in there because, let's face it, we're meeting. It was kind of cool in the theater at the Foothills Mall. That was kind of cool. And so we had all the different theaters, and Theater 7 was where the nursery was, and Theater 4 was first through sixth, and, had all that kind of stuff set up. So that was but we moved in and we moved out and all of that. And so.
Yeah, that's a lot of work.
It was a lot of work.
Because you have the full band, so you have to set it up.
Yeah. Believe it or not, we packed that whole thing in our panel van.
Oh, really?
I mean, our panel wagon. Yeah, it was crazy. It was really crazy. So we'd move in, we'd move out, we'd do all that, but what happened? Fascinating, because that was in October of '92 when we started, and so in January of '93, I mean, God just did a really cool thing, and everything changed. I mean,
I started in February of '93.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, so you're one of the change then.
Yeah.
Because what happened is in January '93, so we got down to 50 at the end of the year, and I mean, it just almost exponentially started growing. I mean, we got in the theater. We got to 600. We then had to move into the actual mall itself.
Right.
That was a trip. Remember that?
That was.
Echo
the
chamber.
echoing. Yeah.
But we grew to 700 there.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
I mean, we actually went up.
Yeah.
I mean, people were how they power walk. They're power walking by going, what, while I'm teaching, the band, everything going on there. And then we ended up, we couldn't meet there anymore. We were there for like 7 months. And then we moved to DeGrazia Elementary School, which was torture. It was 3 years of torture because it's really back away. It's hard to get people there.
Yeah.
We did that stoplight, Circle K, you're there commercial we had on TV.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, so we went through that process. And so that first 7 years was really, it's kind of funny because everybody, you remember, everybody's kind of having a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I mean, it was kind of cool, all the stuff we were doing, and it was really tough with me.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a really tough time. And so we finally found a place to plant, about 20 acres, and, right off of Cortero. And
that's where you're still at.
And that's where we are right now. We have another location on the east side as well. And so it's interesting that once we got planted, it was such a relief to me.
Yeah, I bet.
But I went into a depression for about 9 months. That was pent up from the 7 years of I felt like I couldn't find a place for my family.
Okay.
That's what it felt like to me. And so I went through that depression thing, and I actually wrote the song "Call on Him" through that process, and God is my refuge and strength, a very present help in times of trouble, therefore I will not fear. And that was both looking back at the time of my wife dying and then also going through this process. And so, since then, it's been awesome. We had a real kind of roaring time. You remember when we got in like 2003 and 4 and 5 and 6, we ended up, we were a couple thousand, so things were going really well. And so we, after that, we had a real mess up with the staff. So we had all kinds of stuff, kind of belly up on that stuff. So we've had, we have over 1,000 people that go. So that's awesome. We really are thankful for that. But that part was a real rough time too, and it was I would say kind of a sifting process of time, going through that, because we've really seen since that time a stability within, the people of the church that is really cool, and we kind of found our place, found our way as far as what we're doing, and we're very well known in the community because we do a lot of stuff. My wife is very active in trying to fight for God's principles and doing that politically. Yeah. And but sometimes what people try and define as political are just God's standards. And so we're fighting for God's standards. Yeah. People would say, oh, that's political. And no, we're just trying to say, here's what God says, which kind of fits well with that. Right. And so what we have done, and we were the lead on the whole thing with Bookman's when they decided that they were going to go ahead and bring drag shows to children, and we went no. So we had 150 people out there protesting. We were all over the news. That was really cool, and maybe it doesn't kind of correlate, but Bookman's shut down that whole site and went. They did. They unified in a different location, different location. But we just kind of looked at this and went, no. I mean that's just not on our watch. We really do believe that God has put us here for this time and for this moment in our generation to make a difference. And if we don't make a difference, why are we here? What exactly are we doing? And so we're very active, in all of those areas and trying to make that difference. And the reason that we wanted to start the church in the first place is because we really wanted to try and be a church that had a different message, a different direction. And so we do an awful lot of stuff that deals kind of with the cerebral side of helping people know things they need to know. And so as you're well aware, we have our seminar, Facts Behind the Faith, where we intellectually prove God, Jesus, and the Bible. Many people are unaware that Christianity is the only religion that can actually prove what it says to be true. So we have that.
It is.
Yeah, and we've got, we call this the big three. The second one is why bad things happen to good people.
We're coming up on a commercial break, but we'll be back here in just a couple minutes.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Alan Murdoch. For the past 20 years, I've been buying, fixing, and selling properties right here in Southern Arizona. And I want to buy your property. Whether it's a house, apartment, commercial building, or vacant land, regardless of the condition or the situation, I want to talk to you. When you sell to me, I pay cash and it's hassle-free. No repairs, no closing costs, and no commissions. If you have a property you don't want to deal with and you want a quick solution, call, text, or visit selltalon.com. Again, that's selltalon.com.
Discover the power of 88 Crime, where your anonymous tips are rewarded with cash.
When you call in anonymously with a tip, you are given a code. With the code and a password, you can walk into a bank and redeem your reward anonymously. If your anonymous tip results in a felony arrest, you can claim up to $2,500 cash reward.
Let's stop the silence on crime and strive for a safer community. For more information, please visit 88crime.org or call 88crime.
Copper Creek Cookies, Copper Creek Cookies, CopperCreekCookies.net.
We can print anything on our soft vanilla logo cookies. We deliver them and other sweet treats locally. We are located at 4249 West Ina Road, Suite 121. Call us 520-300-1131. We bake smiles.
Copper Creek Cookies, Copper Creek Cookies, CopperCreekCookies.net.
Calling all families. The Marana Pumpkin Patch is your ticket to fall fun for everyone, from toddlers to grandparents. We've got it all. Jumping pillows, a diesel train, a super slide, and more. Kids will love our farm animals, while adults will love our famous corn maze. And don't forget our 70-acre pumpkin patch from Post Farms. Marana Pumpkin Patch, where families make unforgettable fall memories. Tickets available now at maranapumpkinpatch.com.
Hey, welcome back. This is Southwest Flavor. I'm talking to Pastor David McAllister from the Bridge Tucson Christian Church. Welcome.
Thanks. Boy, I got going. Didn't know we were stopping. No?
Yeah. That's okay.
Yeah. So anyway, the big three that we were talking about, facts behind the faith. And then the second one was why bad things happen to good people. And this is a really big one.
That is a huge one.
It's always been frustrating. Now, all of these things come from frustrations in my own personal life relative to Christianity. What I mean by that is, I was raised by a pastor. And so I heard everything that everybody had to say about stuff, but there were certain things that simply didn't make sense to me.
Right.
And I came to the understanding that if God is real, the end result is that it's not that God hasn't been clear, it's that we've missed it.
Yeah.
And that's what caused me to pursue these various seminars that I do, is because, first of all, it made sense to me that there are a whole bunch of religions out there. I mean, bazillions of them. And so either they all contradict each other. So either they're all wrong, or one of them is right and can be proven to be right. So that's what I pursued when I looked into Facts Behind the Faith and put the seminar together, is that the only one that could prove itself to be true, and you're talking about science, you're talking about archaeology, a variety of different ways to do that, that was the only one that could actually do that. So that gave me confidence to be able to truly believe in the Bible and be able to do that. The next step, and I've seen this so many times, and that is where the question comes up, okay, if God is such a loving God, then why is there such evil in our world?
Right. And that does come up, pretty much every day. Yeah. Why do these bad things happen?
Exactly.
Why did this happen to Uncle Joe or, my wife or whatever?
And I have helped over the 42 years of ministry. I can't tell you how many people have come in to talk to me who were getting ready to walk away from Christ.
Right.
Because they just looked at this horrible thing that happened, like my wife dying.
Sure.
Okay, just like that.
Yeah.
And they looked at this and went, wow, if God is doing all of this, or at least even allowing all of this, and I'm sorry, I can't take that kind of a God. God feels like Satan to me all of a sudden. And to see the relief on their face when I explained, like 1 John 5:19 says the whole world lies in the power of the evil one. And to be able to help them to understand the very real evil that is here and that God is fighting on our behalf every step of the way. Yeah. And that God's not allowing it. He's not causing it. He's actually fighting against it. And honestly, is doing a very effective job. Yeah. Because if you think, the Bible says that that Satan prowls around like a roaring lion seeking who he can devour. Jesus said that the enemy comes to steal, to kill, to destroy. I mean, the reality is this is a guy who wants nothing but evil. Yeah. And if he, as I said, the whole world lies in the power of the evil one, if that really is the case, he's not doing a very good job because most people, for a lot of their life, are kind of doing okay.
Yeah. And most people have a pretty good life.
Exactly, yeah. Comparatively. And so the reality is that God is fighting on our behalf against the mess that we demanded because we chose sin and Satan instead of God in the very beginning. Right. And so anyway, the seminar came out of that because I'd seen such relief from people, and I mean tears of joy in their understanding when they saw it, when they got it, that we put that seminar together. And then the next step was creation versus evolution. I wanted to scientifically destroy Darwinian macroevolution. Yeah. And very few people are aware that not only is that doable, it's easily doable scientifically. And so it's a 4-hour seminar, but the reality is it blows your mind. It's just an amazing thing, and it wipes Darwinian macroevolution off the map. Now, it's fair to ask the question, why would a pastor care about that? And the reason is that Darwin started off his whole search because he needed to figure out a way to explain how we are here if there is no God. He needed to get rid of God. And so Darwinian macroevolution was set in place to explain, see, we're just a bunch of accidents. There is no God. You don't have to listen to God, etc. Well, I'm sorry, but that's right up my wheelhouse. And so I needed to be able to take away the only explanation, supposedly, that people had to be able to do that. And so that's why I did that seminar. And you've seen it. I mean, it's an awesome seminar. It blows your mind. So those three, and then we have lots of other seminars, about marriage, about raising kids, about a variety of different things.
How would people have access to those seminars?
Those are available on YouTube. You can actually call the church, and the executive pastor is my son, and he can set people up to do that, to be aware of that. You can get them at the church as well. But there's another avenue, so we said we could talk a little bit about this.
Of course.
I am also an author, and it's only been the last 2 years that I've done it, but I'm just now finishing my 6th book. So we have a lot of books that are there. So what I saw, I've always loved the whodunits. I mean, I've read them all my life, and I really did want to kind of delve into this idea of the whodunits. And so I set up a book. The guy, his name is Blake Moran. He's an investigator. He initially is out of Phoenix. So any of your listeners who are in Arizona, especially if you're in Tucson, you literally, in the first book, can walk right through all the places in Tucson. You'll be aware of them. I talk about El Molinitos. I talk, things you're aware of.
All the landmarks.
Yep, exactly. Yeah. So they're all there. But anyway, he starts in the first book, and he has this great investigation. He comes to Tucson from Phoenix for the purpose of this horrible murder that took place. And so he's investigating that murder, and it's really cool. Well, in that, then, he ends up meeting a guy named Pastor Brian. And he's from Desert Christian Church is what it's called. Okay. And so I just made up a dude.
Sure.
And he comes there. But anyway, through the process, in book 1, if you want to understand facts behind the faith, you get to watch it in the real world because Pastor Brian challenges Blake, wait a minute, you're supposed to be an investigator. Because he just came with the idea that most of the world has, faith is blind faith. There is no facts. There's no proof. And he's like, what? And you know that how? Because he never looked into it. Right. And it really throws Blake off. And then he walks him through the process throughout parts of the book. And so it kind of just puts facts behind the faith into the middle of the book. And so then that happens.
Wow.
The second book then moves in. So that's called Too Young to Die. And it's Davy Mack I went by with a pseudonym. Just because I read lots of books, I can't ever remember the author's names. So I wanted something similar or simple, something that people grab. So it's D-A-V-I-E and then M-A-C, Davy Mack.
Davy Mack.
Yeah, and it's available at DavyMackBooks.com or also Amazon. If you search there, you can see also, right now there's 5 books. But anyway, what the next thing that happened then is this in the second book, and it's called Taken and Afraid. It's this serial killer and rapist. It's but I'm very careful about that and how I treat all of that. But he has to go to Florida, so he goes to Florida. But through the process, as you can imagine, her parents are freaked out. Now they were Christians, but they don't know what to do with this horrible bad thing that happened if God is in charge of everything. And so I work into all of that. Why bad things happen to good people.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the book, make that available as well on YouTube for them.
Okay.
In the third book, it's called Survival of the Fittest. He actually goes to San Francisco. He meets the 23rd richest man in the world, Araby Triplehorn. Yeah, and this guy he's pretty awesome. But Araby brings Blake there for the purpose of dealing with what's called the See Me Killer. And the See Me Killer, what he actually does is
is that a continuation from the second book, or is it a whole different?
They're all separate. You can read them all separately, but it does continue through Blake's life to be able to do that. There's even romance in it, so it all works well. But what happens with this is the See Me Killer, really kind of wild, is he takes these young kind of co-ed girls and kills them, but then he stages them. He puts them in clothes for the public to see, so that literally you're walking on a path. You look over and see a girl who's just sitting there looking out at the ocean. She's actually dead, and he sets them there. So that's why he's called the See Me Killer. Okay. This is kind of interesting too, because in this book you get a chance to be aware of what they for Mr. Triplehorn, because he's a multi-billionaire, and his. What they call his stable of automobiles, because they don't just have a car collection, when you're that rich.
Yeah.
And
He's got a whole warehouse of them?
And Blake gets to drive them. And so you get to go through the process with these amazing, and you'll learn a lot about the Bugatti 110. You learn it's a $9 million supercar. And so, you get a lot of it. So, but through the process of that, his daughter, Mr. Triplehorn's daughter, Susan, is in a psychology class. And in that class, they begin to battle out the issue of Darwinian macroevolution. So Blake, who's not a Christian, he's still not a Christian, but he's well aware of Pastor Brian because he got access to Pastor Brian relative to what happened in Florida, why bad things happen to good people. Right. And so Blake was the one who brought up the seminar. So then and Blake hasn't seen it yet, but he called Pastor Brian, he got him access to it, he and Susan sit there and they watched the whole seminar. Susan then goes into the psychology class and takes on the, quote, science majors. And this really does happen in the real world. Yeah. It's surprising how science majors have no capability of defending Darwinian macroevolution in the real world, not from a scientific perspective. Okay. I've dealt with many of them who they kind of go on the appeal to authority, which is a logical fallacy. I'm a science major. And so I don't care if you're a science major. Let's look at the facts. Yeah. She destroys the science majors. Okay. And then through the process, then the See Me Killer and everything that happens there and what Blake does to her. So I don't want to give anything away there. So that's the third one. The fourth one is called A Dangerous Environment. So what I incorporated here was 2 things that are really important. And for your listeners, if you're not aware of this stuff, guys, this is a great way to find out about it. So it's called A Dangerous Environment. And what happens is, I guess I can't tell you that part. It'll give it away. But anyway, he ends up going to Cancun, Mexico, to a resort there. And then through the process of that, there's 2 areas of the dangerous environment. I deal with human trafficking. So I make people aware of what takes place through that. He ends up in Dallas, Texas, okay? So, and you learn a whole bunch of stuff. You learn all kinds of stuff about the cartels, what they do, how they're involved. He's very involved in the Los Zetas cartel. So that one's there. Where in Tucson, we're Sinaloa, pretty much on our border. But he deals with that quite a bit. Well, what ends up happening, not only that, is that through the process, and long story, but Pastor Brian's daughter, Olivia, finds herself in a situation where she has to debate the issue of climate change. So the second part of the dangerous environment is you got human trafficking. The second part is, okay, let's actually find out the facts about supposed man-made climate change. Right. I mean, Olivia, she lists off every prediction that climate change has ever made.
Oh, yeah. Like our 1980 ice age?
Everything.
Yeah.
Everything.
Yeah.
It's like 176 things. They've been wrong every single time.
Oh.
Literally no prediction of any climate change alarmist has ever come true. I'm talking Time Magazine. I'm talking everything.
Yeah.
And so you learn so much really cool stuff in the middle of the whodunit that's happening. And then this fifth one right now, boy, if you guys can get this just because right before the election whole thing, it's called The Conspiracy Cabal.
Okay.
And this one, you learn so much about the founding of our nation and where it came from. So many people are completely unaware that our founders actually stated that this representative republic was founded on not religions, as James Madison, but on Christianity, so that here other religions can have the freedom of worship.
Right.
Basically founded on that. Amazing stuff. So anyway, he has to end up in Washington, D.C., which was really cool for me to investigate because I got to go in and Washington, D.C. is a fascinating city, and what they have and the background, the history, all the things there. But I mean, you could literally go with the book and you could follow the path where he went. And, he stays at the Astoria there. I mean, just it's really cool. But anyway, you see the cabal that really is happening, and a lot of people are unaware. There's a worldwide cabal. Everything we see, for instance, even in what we're seeing right now with the election, it really isn't Republicans against Democrats. It's globalists against nationalists. And nationalists isn't a bad thing. It just means you love your country. Everybody should love their country.
Sure.
And so you see the globalists against the nationalists and what's happening, and you begin, and I identify, I mean, I don't know how much people are aware of how evil Bill Gates is, but he really wants to reduce the population, quote unquote, reduce. That means kill. Yeah. Reduce our population by at least a third across the world. And this is a guy who has the resources to, chases. Obviously, most people are a little bit aware of George Soros and some of the areas there, but it is a fascinating thing to see the cabal and what is there. We talk about the World Economic Forum and Klaus Schwab and what he wants to do. I mean, that guy's a scary German. I mean, he just
I've never heard of him.
Oh, yeah, he started the World Economic Forum, and they're like a $90 billion organization now. Yeah, and they're the ones that go to Davos. Have you ever heard of Davos? Okay, Switzerland. And so they all fly their jets in there, even though supposedly they're against
climate change or whatever. Yeah.
And they go there in Switzerland to Davos, and they basically try and plot how to take over the world. I mean, it really is kind of, if you think about the evil German villain, it's like, okay, that's who these guys are. So you learn so much about what's actually globally going on and that desire. And one of the reasons that's important, too, is if you read the Bible a little bit, you see that the whole point at the end is a one world government.
Yeah.
That's really not a good thing for people of faith, for Christians. And so we need to understand that we don't want to hasten a one world government because that's not going to be good for us.
Yeah.
And so anyway, each one of those books gives you a great whodunit and trying to figure out how this whole thing works, but also you learn some really things. And in addition to that, if I can say so myself, Blake is funny.
Okay.
He's quirky. The way his brain works. I mean, now every time I talk like this, Ron, my wife goes, David, Blake's not real. And I say, he's real in my heart, because I talk about these people like they really exist. But
so does your wife think that Blake is funny?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
She does.
All right.
Yeah, she actually
does. Well, that's a win for you then.
It is. Yeah. He really does catch you. And the people who have read it, that have talked about it are like, he's witty, but he's a goof. It's one of those things like he's just got a unique personality. Yeah. So it's been fun. It's really been fun to write those books. I'm really excited to be able to have that kind of an offshoot doing something different.
And you said that you have some romance in there. Was that difficult or?
No. I'm kind of a romantic. Yeah, I am. Okay. I love my wife with all my heart. I've always gone through I literally never wanted us to ever become where we were no longer boyfriend and girlfriend. We never wanted to be the old married couple, and so
you're always dating.
Yeah, always. And that just again, with my first wife passing away, things became very different. So Kim and I have been married now for over 30 years, and we're having the time of our life right now. Now, we have 7 kids, and we have 15 grandbabies.
Wow.
And so, we're very, very, very blessed that way. And we loved that. We loved all the elements of kids growing up and all those things. But I got to tell you, we're living the dream right now because we are both in. She's heavily involved in the things that she's doing politically. She's working with Charlie Kirk at Turning Point USA, so she's real involved with that. She's a PC. She's really doing some really effective stuff. She's out there big time. I know we're going to talk about Proposition 139, but she's out there big time. I mean, literally, she goes to the MVD. At least 2 days a week, and then she has a whole crew called our ACT team.
Right.
And we have over 100 people that are in our ACT team, and so we have people who go and they literally try and talk to people. And the thing that has been fascinating is they've been able to really convince a lot of people who thought they knew what they thought. You know, but we have a lot of ignorance, on some of these issues, and so they've been able to talk to people and they get a lot of middle fingers too. They get the other side. That happens. But I mean, I've got to tell you, I mean, she is. I call her my warrior princess. I mean, it's just I don't like what did you do with Kimberly? I mean, she's just
really she's on a mission.
Yeah, she's lit up on this. Yeah. She really is. She goes out. She went out last night. She's knocking on doors. She's doing the whole thing where you go and talk to people and give them information. And interestingly enough, people are very, very open to that and very thankful to have that information. So it's been really, really great to be able to see that. So, we've all kind of doing our own thing, doing a little different stuff, but it's fun.
Yeah. Isn't it cool to have grown children and be able to be more of a friend to them? I mean, when they're growing up, you have to be dad.
Yep.
And you have to say no, and you have to not always be popular. But if you have a good relationship with your kids, it's just so awesome.
It really is.
It is.
We just had Kim's birthday just was there, so we had everybody over on Sunday, and it's just so cool to see everybody. And like I said, 15 grandbabies. So it's a thing. So we were outside. They were in the pool. We're doing all kinds of stuff there. But just to see, and we really do believe that ultimately, I mean, we're real thankful that we got to start the church. But we're well aware that not long after we're dead and gone, nobody will even remember we started the Bridge Christian Church. I mean, that's not our legacy. Now, we've impacted thousands of people, and we're really thankful for that, and that will live on. But we really do recognize that ultimately our key element will be the family.
Yeah.
And those 7 kids and the kids that they have, and they're by and large, they're doing what they need to do, to be able to follow Christ, and we're very thankful for that. Yeah.
Very good. Mm-hmm. I think we're up against the break for the commercial. Maybe. There we go. All right. We will be back for the last segment in just a couple minutes.
Hi, I'm Alan Murdoch. For the past 20 years, I've been buying, fixing, and selling properties right here in southern Arizona. And I want to buy your property. Whether it's a house, apartment, commercial building, or vacant land, regardless of the condition or the situation, I want to talk to you. When you sell to me, I pay cash and it's hassle-free. No repairs, no closing costs, and no commissions. If you have a property you don't want to deal with and you want a quick solution, call, text, or visit selltoalan.com. Again, that's selltoalan.com.
Discover the power of 88 Crime, where your anonymous tips are rewarded with cash.
When you call in anonymously with a tip, you are given a code. With the code and a password, you can walk into a bank and redeem your reward anonymously. If your anonymous tip results in a felony arrest, you can claim up to $2,500 cash reward.
Let's stop the silence on crime and strive for a safer community. For more information, please visit 88crime.org or call 88crime.
Copper Creek Cookies, Copper Creek Cookies, coppercreekcookies.net.
We can print anything on our soft vanilla logo cookies. We deliver them and other sweet treats locally. We are located at 4249 West Ina Road, Suite 121. Call us 520-300-1131. We bake smiles.
Copper Creek Cookies, Copper Creek Cookies, coppercreekcookies.net.
Calling all families. The Marana Pumpkin Patch is your ticket to fall fun for everyone. From toddlers to grandparents. We've got it all. Jumping pillows, a diesel train, a super slide, and more. Kids will love our farm animals, while adults will love our famous corn maze. And don't forget our 70-acre pumpkin patch from Post Farms. Marana Pumpkin Patch, where families make unforgettable fall memories. Tickets available now at maranapumpkinpatch.com.
Welcome back. We are Southwest Flavor. How you doing, David?
I'm doing all right.
Yeah.
Doing all right.
Very good. Mm-hmm. So you've been a pastor here for a little bit over 30 years in Tucson, and I know that you've run into a little bit of controversy, standing the ground for God's word here in Tucson.
We have. We've had a variety of different things. I mean, we've been picketed. That typically was because of our stand. And again, if you can't take a stand on God's principles, how do you call yourself a church? But God's very clear about the sin of homosexual behavior, and we take that stand. We've had numerous people who have been involved in that, who have visited the church or even come to the church and changed their behavior through that process. And so we've been picketed for that. We've been picketed, obviously, on the whole issue with, which is kind of wild, but the whole drag queen situation to kids. So obviously that's just not okay on our watch to do that. Wingspan came after us at one point, so we had that.
I think I remember that. Yeah.
So that was interesting.
With one of the news stations. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we had that, and I know it's interesting too. We the whole COVID thing. So now we're talking 4 years ago.
Right.
We were the first church to open. In Tucson, and we it's kind of interesting because we took some heat for that because oh my gosh, you're going to kill everybody, which. We waited until, as we looked around, we could see it. It's kind of interesting. Everybody says follow the science until it's not what they want to do.
Exactly.
And so we looked around and saw the studies that were there and realized that, no, there's nothing to this. We don't have to do this. We saw it was very clearly to the elderly and typically many times in nursing home type situations.
Yeah, if you're compromised, if your health is more compromised.
Yeah, and so they were. And obesity was an issue as well. And so we understood what those elements were. And just felt very strongly, Hebrews chapter 10, verse 25 talks about not neglecting the assembling together of the believers, as is the habit of some. And so God was real clear the church needs to continue to meet. And so we were closed for the 6 weeks that they asked for, and then just went, okay, we're done. So on the one hand, got kind of that how dare you type thing.
Yeah.
It was kind of surprising how many people started coming to our church after that because initially it was like, well, you're the only church that's open. And then it was like they started learning what we stand for and what we believe. And we don't apologize for the fact that we follow the Bible and what the Bible says. Now, carefully understood, meaning by that, it can be twisted to say things that it doesn't actually say.
Sure. And
we believe our responsibility is to take something that's complex. There's 66 books in the Bible. It's very complex. But to be able to give the background, the historical setting, what was being said to whom, by whom, and through the process of that, get to the actual statements that God wants us to understand. And based on that, we are unapologetic about following what the Bible actually says.
Right.
And so we don't change. We don't decide that, because our culture is different, we're going to do all that. And so, yes, we take heat because of that. We understand that. Obviously, we are taking a huge stand relative to this election. And what we've tried to make clear here is that we don't believe that politicians or politics are the way out of this mess that we're in right now. We really do believe it's God and God's principles. But what we have really gotten away from is we've allowed the world to say things are political that God said are moral.
Okay.
And so what the world does by that says, oh, no, you can't talk about political things. It's like, what? You've just taken a whole bunch of things off the table that God told us we're supposed to talk about.
Right.
And so we talk about them. And through the process, and I just a couple weeks ago did a whole thing on, I write all the music at the church. And so I wrote a new song about 8 months ago, knowing this was coming up, called No Time to Lose Hope.
Okay.
And it's based out of Jeremiah 29. And there in verse 7, it actually says that we're to do the best for where we're planted. And he's talking to the people who were sent into exile by God into Babylon. And he said, I want you to live there. I want you to marry. I want you to do the best. Because he basically said, and their success is your success. And there's a responsibility to be able to step up and make a difference. Like I said, this is our time, our generation, our moment.
Right.
And this is all we get, 70, 80 years. This is it.
Yep.
And it's our job to carry the water that other people have carried in the past to be able to make that difference and have that impact. And so what I was able to do that was very different. 4 years ago, I actually just showed the platforms of both the Democrat and the Republican Party and asked the question, which one most closely adheres to God's principles? Mm-hmm. This time, it was very different because I started off with this statement, and it was a shocker. Everybody was shocked to hear it. I said, okay, here you go, guys. Get ready. This is very insightful. Politicians lie. Everybody laughs.
Right.
It's like, yeah, we knew that. So we're aware of that.
Right.
I said, but what's interesting is that we don't have to just listen to what they say. We are actually at election where we can actually look at what they did or what they do.
Their voting record.
Yes. And so what we were able to do is say we had the Trump administration for 3 years before COVID happened.
Right.
We had and again, Kamala has taken credit for the whole Biden situation. So we had the Kamala for 3 years, her administration, if you will, for 3 years, and we saw what happened there. And then what I did is I went through, and I probably went through 25, 30 things, in society, and just showed exactly what happened within those 3 years. I mean, you're talking about a better economy, a safe border, and less crime. I mean, it goes on and on and on as far, and even standing against things. And I don't say that Trump understands spiritual things or Christian things. I don't know where he stands on that, but I do know this. He is a fixer. He's a guy that wants to look at things and say, this isn't going well. Yeah. And he looked at Barack Obama's administration. It was a catalyst for him to actually get in the race in the first place and went, boy, that didn't work. Yeah. And so that was a foundation for him. Well, what's happened is now you see everything 20% more expensive than what it was. You see what we see with inflation taking place. You're seeing 10 million illegal aliens in our society. You're seeing all the things with the crime that's been there. You've seen no wars under Donald Trump, wars everywhere under the Harris administration, all the things that we see. And so what we did is we just kind of went through and looked at all of this, a support for men playing in sports, a support for men being in women's bathrooms under the Harris administration, as opposed to, nope, that's the opposite under the Trump administration. And what I told them is this: the Bible tells us that we are, and this is 1 Timothy chapter 2, in verse 2 it says that we're so supposed to pray and make a difference in our society. It says so that we can live a tranquil and quiet life in all godliness and dignity. And I said, so there's God's standard. He's saying, guys, you get to be selfish here. He says to his people, he says, here's what I want you to pray about. Here's what I want you to work toward. And so I said, here's what you have to look at. Look at these two things and the results of what we saw. Yeah. And ask which one provides a tranquil and quiet life in all godliness and dignity. And through the process of that, we have an opportunity to see God's principles in the real world and to be able to make that difference and step forward. So that's what we're seeking to do.
Cool, cool. Yeah. I love every week that you have something different for the church to pray for the nation.
Oh, yes. Yeah, we're real big on that. That's how we start every, when I get up to teach, or one of the other guys. We've got a kind of a group of teachers. And when they get up, we say, here's what God says. We need to pray for the nation. And so this week we'll pray for this. We've been doing that now for probably, 9 months, every single week, and say this week, this is one specific area. Like this. Last week, we were praying about getting back to the understanding of the freedom of assembly and what it actually means in the First Amendment, that we're not talking about violent rioting. Yeah. So everything that happened with BLM and all the things no, that's not freedom of assembly. Very clearly, the founders had the idea that we were able to peacefully protest. Right. And we have to get back to that because otherwise we will see nothing but chaos.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I love doing that too.
Cool. Well, let's talk a little bit about Prop 139.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, Prop 139 is. I'm horrified, I have to say, at the lie that is being put there. All of you listening have seen this if you're in the Arizona area, and that is they keep saying stop the ban. There is no ban. Where we are right now is abortion. First of all, the exceptions. All right, rape, incest, life of the mother are in place. And it's 15 weeks. So we're talking almost 4 months to make that decision. Yeah. As opposed to, and if you look at Prop 139, it actually, because they have all these exceptions, including they remove doctors from the element, they actually call it healthcare providers, which literally could mean anything. And they've even said massage therapists, acupuncture. Yeah, it's like,
Really?
yes, who could be involved in abortion? I mean, it's horrifying.
Wow.
They've opened it all up. And what happens is it opens it up to all 9 months of pregnancy.
Wow.
Well, it's interesting because if you actually look at the statistics, all right, if you take, for instance, if you say, okay, how much of our population is for no abortion in the third trimester, you get up to 90% right
Sure,
there.
yeah.
If you even bring it back to the first trimester, which so this would be it'd be 13 weeks, but at 15 weeks, you still get over 70% of people who go, okay, yeah, I would like that. If you ask who wants abortion for all 9 months, it's less than 10% of our population.
Wow.
And here's the weird thing. If, in fact, we did this, we went to this process and we put this thing through, do you know that the only countries we are analogous to at that point are North Korea and China?
Oh,
That's our abortion policy now. It is a free-for-all at that point. Now, please understand that we get that you don't change the direction by government. We don't think the answer is government. We know we have to change hearts.
yeah.
But, and honestly, the 15 weeks, if you look at the percentages of abortion that are done, like in the first 15 weeks, it's 85% of abortions.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that means the 15% in the second and third trimester, like people say, oh, that doesn't happen. Yeah, 15% of them
it does
actually do.
happen,
And you're
yeah.
talking about viable, if you don't want to go with the idea that life begins at conception, which that's scientifically, medical science is
It is.
ridiculous.
Yeah.
Because you have to understand that after the conception takes place, literally, don't miss this, nothing is added except nutrition. Everything at the moment of conception is completely there. Nothing is added except nutrition.
Right.
So, and that child has its own DNA.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not the mother's body; it's another body.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons this becomes such a big deal is because we've just so lost sight of our sexual norms of being able to control ourselves and behave ourselves. And what we found is, by and large, abortion. I don't know if you know this or not, but if you look at rape, incest in the life of the mother, it's less than 3% of all abortions.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
Yeah. So over 97% of all abortions is birth control. That's all that it is. It's like, oops. And so what's happened is we've become so lax through the process of doing this that we're destroying children left and right. And this is kind of interesting because, and this blows my mind, you're probably aware of this, but the reality is that we don't have, in America right now, we do not have the necessary replacement rate to continue as a country.
Right.
The replacement rate is 2.1%. Now, I want you to think about it. We are right now at 1.7%, and if we don't get that rectified quickly, you can't actually come back from it. I mean, we're looking at in China, I think it's at 1.1%, and I don't know if you heard this or not, but they got rid of their one-child policy.
Right. They're encouraging people to have kids now.
And it's not working.
Yeah.
They're getting mad about it because they said, okay, now you can have 2. They didn't keep having 2. So they said, no, okay, now you can have 3. Nobody's having 3 because they've put it in such a thing to say that children are a bad thing. It's just really unfortunate.
Change the culture, kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Psalm 127 says that children are a gift from the Lord. Blessed is the man whose quiver's full of them. And my quiver's full, And we've lost sight of the value of the human race.
Yeah.
And anyway, so Prop 139, all that it would do is if you vote no on 139, it keeps Arizona at 15 weeks with all the exceptions in place and all the safety of women. And that's the thing is, if you go the other way, you're removing a lot of the safety elements, issues where, for instance, someone who tries to use the abortion drug all of a sudden doesn't have to have an ultrasound to make sure it all got taken care of.
Yeah.
I mean, they could die from sepsis, a variety of different things. And so there's such danger for women. So you're not doing women a favor by voting yes on 139. The reality is that very few people, and this is, I told you my wife goes to the MVD and with other people and they talk to people. She's had so many times where someone has been like, oh no, I know where I stand. I'm pro abortion. I'm pro, whatever. They'll say that.
Pro-choice
and
or whatever.
they'll say that. But I don't like to say pro-choice.
Yeah.
You know the doctor who came up with that? He ended up becoming pro-life, and he hated himself to the day he died. Nathanson, I think is his name, because he came up with that to fool everybody. The whole pro-choice thing is because he understood pro-abortion wasn't a positive message.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's why they call it women's health care now.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So what ends up happening is she will actually throw out one thing as this person who said, oh, no, I already know where I stand. And she'll say, oh, okay. And then she'll say one thing. Oh, did you know? Lots of times they'll say that should be between a doctor and a woman. And my wife will go, oh, I agree. Did you know they're taking doctors out with 139? And they'll stop and go, what? Next thing you know, she has a long conversation with them, all the things they didn't know that were really going on, specifically that there is no ban. That's just a lie that they're using. And so it is true, Satan from the very beginning has used deceit to fool people. And I would just challenge everyone: don't buy the lie. The reality is they're gonna deceive. We know it. It's frustrating that they get away with it, but we have capabilities of good thought, and we would encourage people to think really well, to look into it. There's all kinds of resources that we have at the Bridge. That we have, we have a thing called the Copper Ticket. We have all the locations for early voting. We have, a variety of things that give very clear understandings of what things have. We just did a thing. We had over 200 people show up for an explanation of all the propositions. So at each location, we live fed it to the East location. And they actually went through about an hour and a half, and they explained all the propositions, what they meant, what it would mean when you vote yes, no, et cetera. Just because we want people to be well informed, even if they're going to vote in a way that we don't believe is God's direction, at least be informed.
At least they're informed.
Exactly.
Yeah.
At least be informed, because you do have the right to vote. Do what you need to do. We do it based on God's principles, and why? Because we believe that God's principles work in the real world. They're common sense. Yep. And honestly, in this election, if people will just vote almost selfishly for their own best interest, then the reality is God's principles, because they work in the real world, will be applied.
Very good. Yeah. So where's the church located at?
Oh, it's right off of Cortero, and it's Sandy Desert Trail. So you basically turn onto Sandy Desert Trail, and it's right there. It's 20 acres back there. Then the east location is over on Tanca Verde.
All right. And what time are the services?
Oh, you'd have to ask me that. Okay, we have 4 services at the west location. So on Saturday, it's going to be at 3:30 and 5, and on Sunday, it's going to be at 9:30 and 11.
Yeah,
is that
9:30
true?
and 11. I believe so.
I really should know. I promise I'm there, but I always tell people I just work there. So but I think it's 9:30 and 11.
Right. Mm-hmm. And they can check you out at thebridgetucson.com?
Yep, bridgetucson.com. They can do all that. And again, check out davymackbooks.com. Check those out, guys. There's some interesting things that, again, both a whodunit. Oh, in addition to that, just so you know, we have that's all in audiobook. It's all in ebook.
Oh, okay.
And so, this is funny. I'm doing the 6th book right now, and it's international. So he's spending a lot of time in Lyon, France. Oh. And so I don't speak French. I'm having to audiobook right now. I'm having to go
So you
through.
do all your voiceover?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, I actually do the audiobooks. Yeah. And so I'm actually having to speak French from Pierre and Jacques-Luc. It's at Interpol. Interpol's located in Lyon, France. And so that's where they're having this big international, and it's called The Art of the Steal. And it's really cool because this guy, he's very good at stealing. I mean, he's very good. But he also is an artist himself, and he does his work in steel. Oh. And he leaves one of his pieces when he steals the masterpiece. Okay. And that's part of the art of the steal. It's really cool. Yeah, to be able to do that.
Very interesting.
I hope you'll check it out, davymackbooks.com.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you so much for coming on with us.
Sure.
All right. And thank you again for joining in. We'll see you next week, next Tuesday at 9 a.m. for Southwest Flavor.